I feel like it's so important to have these conversations. We're going to be talking a lot about postpartum psychosis, depression, a lot of heavy topics in this case, but I feel like it's so important to talk about them. That being said, though, we are talking about children. So if you think that listening to any of those topics, children, postpartum psychosis, postpartum depression, any of that, if you think that listening to that is going to harm your mental health in any way, shape, or form, please skip this video and I will see you in my next one. So let's get into it. One could argue that at one point in her life, Andrea Yates had everything going for her. She grew up and was raised in a pretty religious household in Houston, Texas. She was one of 5 children. She was the baby of the family and also a very, very smart girl. Andrea became her high school's valedictorian. She was also a swim team champion, and it almost sounds like she was one of those people that are just kind of good at everything. The kind of person that's very dedicated. Like, you know, if she's gonna do something, she's gonna do it to the best of her ability. After high school, she attended college, graduated, and went on to become a registered nurse working at Houston's MD Anderson Cancer Center. It was in the year 1993 that she married a man called Russell Yates, otherwise known as Rusty, the love of her life. They first met in 1989 when Andrea was working as a registered nurse, and Rusty was I always have a hard time saying this word. It's the easiest word in the world. I don't know why. NASA engineer. Like, I feel like I just pronounced that word weird, but he was an engineer, and they dated for 4 years before deciding to finally get married, settle down, and start a family together. Shortly after the wedding, Andrea left her job. She quit because she felt like she was ready to finally pursue something that she had wanted her entire life, and that was becoming a mom. If you didn't guess already by her career choice of becoming a nurse, she had a very nurturing, caring aura about her. She loved to help people. She loved to care for them, and she was so excited to start a family of her own. It did not take long for her to fall pregnant, and throughout the next 7 years, she and Rusty would welcome 5 beautiful babies into this world. Their firstborn was a baby boy they named Noah, born in February of 1994, and at this point, they were living in this beautiful house in Texas, just soaking everything up. Newly married, first-time parents, they were also diving deep into their faith, which was something that was really important for the both of them. It was all new and exciting. So Andrea was raised Catholic, but then she became a Christian. Rusty was raised Christian, and that's how they were planning on raising their children. After their marriage, they both became very involved in an almost fundamentalist branch of Christianity, and they had a very big influence in their lives when it came to religion. A guy named Michael, I think you pronounce his name Woroniki. Michael was what I guess you could call like a traveling preacher. He was one of those guys that stood outside with signs preaching his beliefs, and it was his belief that parents must raise their children free from all sin in order for them to be able to go to heaven. And it also sounds like he was the kind of person that believed that going to heaven wasn't something that just happened. It was something that you earned and something that you had to work for. He also believed that in a family, it was the mother's responsibility to ensure the children's salvation, because it was the mother's duty to spiritually protect her children, while it was the father's role to go out and work and make money for the family. That's what he would preach. And that's also what Andrea and Rusty believed. They also believed that they should have as many children as God would give them. So forget birth control. That was out of the question. They wanted as many kids as they could have. They also thought that outside influences had a very negative impact on their lives. So for example, they would rather homeschool the kids to limit outside influences. They would rather just stay in their little bubble where they felt safe in. Andrea and Rusty would often have Bible study sessions at their house, and a lot of times they would have tapes playing of Michael preaching, and they would listen to those. So the couple gives birth to their second child. Rusty gets a job in Florida. They move there and live in a trailer for a little bit, but by the time they give birth to their third child, the family moves back to Texas, back to Houston. They're living in a trailer camper van situation now as a family of 5. And the reason why they chose to live in a trailer camper van situation rather than a house was because of their faith, because they would rather live in a compact, smaller place altogether, again playing into the idea that the outside world was dangerous and full of bad influences. So they would rather live a very minimalistic, simple lifestyle. But the thing is that when it came to their faith and this preacher guy, Michael, Andrea started to fall into a pretty negative headspace because she was hearing over and over again how it was her role to save her children, how she had to protect them from everything evil in the world in order for them to go to heaven, how every single one of her choices in life had to be perfect for her children to go to heaven. And I think the concept of it is pretty common, right? Like, you want to be good to your children, you want to set a good example, you want them to be safe and sound. But in this case, there was such an intense pressure about it. Like, I'll give you an example. This didn't actually happen, but just to give you an idea of what it was like, I don't know. Say Andrea bought herself a new pair of shoes. That meant that she was very materialistic, that she was very greedy, and that because she was greedy for wanting shoes, now her children wouldn't go to heaven. It was to that degree, and she felt like she was under so much pressure. And on top of that, this guy Michael started telling her and Rusty that because of choices that they made in their lives, their kids were not going to go to heaven. And that freaks Andrea out. Also, very important to note that Andrea had struggled with her mental health ever since she was a teenager. When she was 17 years old, she opened up to one of her friends about depression and just about how her mind was not a nice place to be. Now, as a mom, finding herself in this situation, she dives deeper into her faith, thinking, I need to fix this. I need to do everything right. I need to make sure that my kids do everything right, or else they're going to become sinners and God's not going to love them and they're not going to go to heaven. So things start changing in the way that when her kids are misbehaving or acting up, Andrea starts looking at them in a negative light, thinking, oh no, my child is acting out. He's a sinner. He's doing everything wrong. He's not going to be able to meet God because of his actions, when in reality, that's not what was happening. It was just kids being kids, behaving like kids. But she didn't look at it that way. She looked at it in the, oh no, they have evil inside of them and I need to save them. So she starts to spiral, and Rusty starts to notice, and it got really bad after their fourth child. One day in 1999, when Rusty came home from work, he found Andrea shaking and chewing on her fingers, looking very unwell, very concerning. The next day, Andrea sadly attempted to unalive herself by taking a lot of the same substance. She was rushed to the hospital. She was treated, but then she was released after her symptoms went away. She was prescribed antidepressants, but she refused to take them. It wasn't long before she tried again, and we later find out that throughout this time, Andrea had been hearing voices in her head telling her to do this, to do that. After the second time, she was hospitalized again, then released, but she was given several different medications. Her family members, by the way, throughout this are very concerned, but also very confused. They see that she's not acting like herself. You would look at her in the eye and you couldn't see her. They thought that she looked like she had lost it. She was clearly struggling so bad, but they didn't know why. And also, that happened in June of 1999. In 1999, mental health was not nearly what it is now. It wasn't a topic of conversation that was talked about often, but it was clear that Andrea's headspace was in a very, very dark spot. In July of 1999, Andrea suffered a nervous mental breakdown. She did not want to be here anymore. The voices in her head continued. She started to hallucinate and she just couldn't take it. It was too much for her. That summer, she was admitted into a psychiatric hospital, which is where she was diagnosed with postpartum psychosis. Postpartum psychosis is a rare but very serious mental health condition that can happen to a mother shortly after giving birth. And it's basically when a mom loses touch with reality, and it can cause hallucinations, so seeing and hearing things that are not there, delusions, so strong or false beliefs, and extreme mood swings, confusion, paranoia, trouble sleeping. It's really scary and it's really serious, and it is considered to be a medical emergency because it can lead to very dangerous thoughts or behaviors, including thoughts of harming or hurting herself or her children. During that stay, she was given more medication, but it actually really seemed to be working. Andrea was able to get herself back. Rusty said that it felt like he finally had his wife back again, but unfortunately that would not last long. The psychiatrist who Andrea saw would later say that she recommended that her and Rusty do not have any more children because she was not in the mental headspace to be able to handle that, and she said that if she were to have any more children, odds were that she was going to fall back into that postpartum psychosis. But less than 2 months after being discharged from the hospital, she would fall pregnant for the fifth and final time. The family had moved into a house at this point. They were no longer in the trailer, and Andrea was feeling good. The medication was working. She felt stable, but the issue came when she thought that she was at such a good place that she did not need the medication anymore. So she stops taking her medication going into the fifth pregnancy, and things would only go downhill from there. Andrea gives birth. Her and Rusty now have 4 boys and 1 baby girl, and the hallucinations come back and the voices come back, and she starts hearing things in her head again telling her to hurt herself and everyone around her. Andrea would later describe what she was feeling to be the devil inside of her. At this time as well, she became obsessed with her faith to a dangerous degree. And it was so loud and so scary in her mind, and she stopped taking care of herself. She stopped taking care of the kids. She wasn't eating. She was treating herself horribly. And of course, Rusty noticed and her mother noticed. Andrea eventually stopped feeding her newborn baby girl completely, and that's when it was decided that she needed to be hospitalized again. In April of 2001, she was hospitalized, given treatment and medication in an attempt to stabilize her. But after a month in the hospital, she seemed to be doing okay enough to be released. But the doctors told Rusty that under no circumstances should Andrea be unsupervised ever. She was doing okay, but she was going to need a lot of time and patience and attention and help from her loved ones, especially when it came to taking care of the kids. Rusty is like, okay, that makes sense, I understand. And his mom ends up moving in with them for a little bit to help out. And they fall into this routine of either Rusty or his mom being home with Andrea and the children at all times. She's doing fine, not great, but fine. A month into this routine, a month into being released from hospital on May 3rd of 2001, in the middle of the day, Rusty's mom finds Andrea in the bathroom. She walks in on her, filling up the bathtub completely. And she's like, hey, is everything okay? Why are you filling up the bathtub in the middle of the day? What's going on? And Andrea tells her, I'm filling it up so I can put my kids underwater, to hold them underwater until they are gone, which is awful, scary for everyone involved. And at that point, Andrea's hospitalized again. And for whatever reason, during that hospital stay, when Rusty, his mom, and the psychiatrist are talking, the psychiatrist makes the decision, I don't know why, he decides that Andrea wanted to unalive herself and herself only. And he says that the reason why she was filling up the bathtub was for herself, not for the children. She is released. She continues seeing a doctor afterwards, and now we get to June 20th of 2001. That day, Rusty left the house to go to work, leaving Andrea alone with the 5 children, even though the doctors told him not to. His mom was supposed to arrive there 1 hour later, so I guess he assumed that Andrea would be fine with the kids for 1 hour. But when he left the house that day, that would be the last time that Rusty would ever see any of his children alive again. When Andrea was alone, she went to the bathroom and she filled up the bathtub. She took her 3 youngest boys into the bathroom and she held them all underwater until they were gone. She then grabbed their bodies and laid them on the bed and put a blanket over them. She then grabbed her youngest baby girl, Mary, took her to the bathtub and held her underwater until she was gone. She then left her floating in the tub. Noah, then the 7-year-old, walked into the bathroom and he asked his mom what was wrong with his sister. He got scared and started trying to run away, but Andrea caught up to him, dragged him into the bathroom, and did the exact same thing to him. She then picked up both of the bodies that were in the bathtub. She laid them on the bed with their siblings and covered them up with a blanket. Afterwards, she called the police and she tells the operator that she needs them to come. The operator on the phone says, "What's the problem? I need to know why we're coming to you, ma'am. Are you ill?" And Andrea says, "Yes, I'm ill." The next call she makes is to her husband, Rusty, and she tells him that he needs to come home immediately because there was something wrong with the kids. Rusty asked which kids, and she said all of them. Officers show up, Rusty shows up, Andrea is placed under arrest immediately, and she doesn't deny anything. In fact, she tells them, "I have the devil inside of me. I'm sick in the head. I'm the worst mom in the world. I need to be sent to prison." But also at the same time, she says that the reason why she did it is because she needed to, because she was afraid that Satan would ruin her children, and she hoped that, quote, maybe in their innocent years, they would be accepted into heaven. The doctors who saw Andrea after the fact said that she was the sickest patient they had ever seen. Andrea Yates had 2 separate trials. The initial trial took place in 2002. She was charged with the murder of her 5 children. She was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Then in 2005, there was an appeal and a retrial. The Texas Court of Appeals overturned Andrea's conviction. So in that second trial, Andrea pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. And she was found not guilty by reason of insanity, and she was sent to a mental hospital rather than a prison. Since then, and to this day, she has remained in psychiatric care, receiving the treatment for her severe postpartum psychosis and underlying mental health conditions. She's now in her 60s and she continues to receive different kind of treatments for different mental health conditions, including postpartum psychosis and schizophrenia. And she has said that she does not want to be eligible for release because she would prefer just to stay in that hospital. Her ex-husband, Rusty, stood by her side throughout the entire thing, and since then he has come out and said that he forgives her because he understands that her action were the result of a severe mental illness rather than intentional harm. They did get divorced, but I read that they still keep regular contact and they talk at least once a month. This is one of those cases where it's so easy to be like, worst mom in the world, what a horrible person, it's awful, which it is. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And it's really, really sad, but this is also one where it's like, I do feel bad for her. And I do think that she was clinically mentally insane. Yeah, it's a tricky one. I have like so many conflicting feelings, but it's a horrific case nonetheless. Let me know if you guys have heard of this before, and let me know what your thoughts are on it, because I want to chat to you guys in the comment section about this. But yeah, that is all from me today. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.